Good morning. This is October 5th, 2017. It's 9:31, and this is a special meeting of the members of the State Liquor Authority. Present today in Albany is Chairman Bradley, Commissioner Ford, Associate Attorney Froehring, and myself, Secretary of the Authority Donahue. There is one item on the calendar today. It is a request for a emergency summary order of suspension with respect to Joseph Paul Winery, Inc. Mr. Froehring, I'll turn it over to you.
Mr. Rizzuti, would you like to make a presentation for us?
Yes, thank you, Counsel. And good morning, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Commissioner. The Counsel's office this morning makes this recommendation because of a cry for help received from the Town of Southold Chief of Police, Martin Flatley, regarding an afternoon on September 30th of this year, last weekend, which can only be described as anarchic at Joseph Paul Winery. On September 30th at around 3 p.m., Southold police officers began to conduct foot patrols at Joseph Paul Winery, doing business as Vineyard 48, because of the massive size of its crowd and because they received a 911 call from neighbors that they could view patrons having sexual relations from their property. Police Officer Onufric responded first to this call regarding sexual conduct, and he discovered two patrons who were highly intoxicated, who were, incoherent. They apparently had finished the sexual act by the time he arrived, but he shooed them away and he observed them go back into the tasting room of Joseph Paul Winery. At that time, Sergeant Latham of the Southold Police did an estimation of over 400 patrons present on the grounds at Joseph Paul Winery. All of the officers averred to me that most, if not, I would say most of these patrons were severely intoxicated. All of the officers said that the security was understaffed to handle these 400 patrons, and all of the officers are in agreement that there were not nearly enough bathrooms for all of these patrons. At approximately 4:30 p.m., a melee broke out between 15 to 20 of these patrons waiting online for a bathroom outside. The police officer Onufric told me that at least 30 people were waiting online to use the restroom, that there was nobody directing the patrons to file in an orderly way, there was nobody kind of speeding the bathroom line along, and that after waiting online for God knows how long, 15 to 20 of them just started screaming, shoving, pushing each other, and ultimately threw fists. 6 Southold police officers had to respond to break up this fight, and at this point, the officers tell me that the establishment just totally lost control of its gigantic crowd. And to restore control, Sergeant Latham ordered that the manager shut down the premises for the afternoon because by that point, the day was beyond saving. The charges in the summary suspension stem from this incident and stem from the operation of the licensee over the course of this season. First, the licensee has failed to notify the authority of a change in their hours of operation. The licensee had filed an affidavit back in 2004 stating that their hours of operations are Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and they're operating this on the weekend, obviously. They have filed no supplemental statement saying as such, and this is a charge that we had charged them with in 2012 in the original litigation that was sustained by the administrative law judge, sustained by the board, and ultimately sustained by the appellate division, that they had failed to notify of the change in hours. And so they've still failed to notify the change in hours. Additionally, they are a focal point for police attention, and they create a sustained pattern of noise and disorder, and that's just for this season alone. And so they're charged with creating a focal point and the sustained pattern for the time period of May 28th of this year through September 30th of this year. And the basis for those charges are that Chief Flatley of the Southold Police has given me a document that says that there have been 10 responses by the Southold Police in 4 months at the establishment. There were 2 alcohol overdoses, that is 2 appearances by police officers for patrons that are so intoxicated, they're not just intoxicated, they're not just falling over, but they're actually alcohol poisoned. And these patrons had to be rushed to the hospital for immediate medical treatment. And that happened twice this year. There were 3 reports of perilous traffic conditions, perilous traffic maneuvers of buses and limos leaving the premises in this time period and making illegal 3-point U-turns on County Road 48, the same illegal 3-point U-turn that resulted in a tragic accident and 4 deaths in 2015, and the police say that traffic pattern is still continuing. And finally, in those 10 responses by Southold Police, there were 4 incidents of patrons harassing neighbors in some manner or another. And neighbors have complained to the press, they've complained to the town meetings, that not only can they view patrons having sex on Vineyard 48's grounds, but these neighbors are saying that patrons are actually trespassing onto the neighbor's property, onto the neighbor's farm equipment, onto the neighbor's lawns, and actually having sexual relations, consuming drugs, and they're just totally out of control. The neighbors have indicated that they're willing to testify at these proceedings. And sadly, the charges of this summary suspension are not the only charges that have been brought against the licensee. As I said earlier, from 2012 to 2013, we brought a proceeding against them. ALJ Nicholas DeCesare and the full board originally sustained 6 of 8 charges, and ultimately in 2016, the appellate division upheld 3 of those 6. Those 3 charges that ultimately stood against the licensee were, first, the failure to notify of their change in hours of operation, as I discussed earlier. Second, that there was a focal point on or before January 1st, 2013. And third, that there was a sustained pattern of noise and disorder on or before January 1st, 2013. And not to relitigate old issues, but I think it's important to highlight some of the testimony and evidence adduced during that original litigation, because it shows that we have nearly identical recidivist behavior here today by the licensee. Police Officer Flatley of the Southold Police testified in that earlier proceeding. He testified to a, quote, voluminous amount of calls and paperwork generated by the Southold Police regarding to incidents at Joseph Paul Winery. He testified that there were myriad incidents of unreasonable noise, overcrowding, over-intoxication, alcohol poisoning, disorderly conduct, traffic congestion, hosting events without any permits from the town, public lewdness, vulgarity, and so on. And that's from 2013. Then the authority presented testimony of residents. First, the authority presented the testimony of Ms. Lori Helsinki, who testified that she lives directly...
Hey, counsel, I don't want to
Sure.
relitigate that previous case. I think
Sure.
that, I mean, given what you've said already, you have a lot.
It's a typo deal.
That's what I thought it was too. I know what you're talking about. You have a lot of events here, and it's obvious that there is a pattern. I have a question regarding the memo, though, on page 6.
Yes.
You talk the second paragraph, the first full paragraph.
Yes.
You talk about police responded to 11 calls at Vineyard 48 from May 14th to October 30th, 2017. Is that in the first line you said, according to the blotter of incidents from 2016. Which year is it?
Yeah, it's 2016, so that was just a typographical error on my part.
Okay.
And so that's
what I thought. I just didn't know what was right.
And one more thing to clarify, too, Mr. Chairman. In my memo, I state originally that in 2017 there were 3 alcohol overdoses, but I conferred with the Chief of Police Flatley yesterday morning after I had already written this memo, and the Chief clarified to me that there were only 2 alcohol poisonings this season so far.
Okay, and then the October 18th, 2014 incident, why is that being charged now, or is that an open case?
That was an open case. I believe the charge was issued last year or the year before. I'm not positive, but it is being prosecuted now, and that is scheduled for a hearing at the end of the month.
Okay. Now, are the police, you mentioned that they did foot patrols this past weekend. Are they regularly being required to do foot patrols because of this activity?
Yes, so the police is, whenever they get notice that there's going to be a large event at the premises, they commit extra officers to it. The chief tells me that there have been several weekends where they've preemptively committed foot patrols to monitor the situation. And in addition to these foot patrols, they're also receiving 911 calls from residents, 911 calls from patrons that essentially corroborate that their anxieties for this establishment.
Have there been any arrests on the premises for disorderly conduct, assaults, anything like that?
I am unaware of actual arrests made at this point.
And did anyone get arrested for the alcohol poisoning?
I do not believe that there were any arrests made on September 30th regarding the over-intoxication and the disorderly.
Do we have a maximum capacity for this place?
That I looked through our databases on compliance. I wasn't able to find a C of O posted. They didn't file an establishment questionnaire because they're a wholesale license, so they didn't hold out to us a maximum occupancy that I could identify. But I am currently working closely with the town attorney of Southold to see what, if any, town documents there are. And thank you for kind of steering us that way. I forgot to mention that there are many town violations, regulations, zoning board determinations that the licensee is in violation of. The licensee is in violation of a site plan regarding the parking. We have town investigators going over 20 days between April and July of this year and recording that on 15 of those 20 days, they were over capacity for the site plan regarding the parking. We have evidence from the town attorney that they are in violation of an order of a Supreme Court justice out in Suffolk County regarding, or mandating that they follow the town site plan regarding the parking, and that they follow the town zoning board determination that there not be a dance club and cigar retail shop. So in addition to the SLA ABC law violations, we have violations of a site plan, and we have violations of an actual order from a Supreme Court justice.
And I see that you mentioned that in your memo, but I don't see any evidence that any violations were issued.
By the town?
Did they issue citations or no?
Yes. So regarding the parking violations, the town has issued, I believe, over a dozen summonses. I did not include that in the memo, but I do have the copies of the summonses in my file.
Okay. So those are all charges too?
Yes. Well, so it's been charged as an umbrella improper conduct because we can't charge them as the local regs.
Okay.
Because this
And
is
then what about any Department of Health violations with the lack of, obviously they don't have sufficient bathrooms?
Right. So again, I don't have any summonses from Department of Health or from Southold Health Code, but I do have what we have charged, because this is a winery, we're limited under the ABC law with what we can charge them regarding local regs, failure to comply. So we're trying to get a little creative, and we're charging this as improper conduct umbrella, in that they're willfully violating the site plan, willfully violating the court orders, and that they're failing to supervise the establishment.
Okay. Any questions, Commissioner?
Just one, is it possible to have a conference with council, even though we won't?
Yes,
Here, but Mark,
sure.
your council today.
Okay, go ahead. Wait, we're on right now. This is
Yes.
Jackie Held, you're not on video.
Oh, sorry.
Morning, Jackie.
Deputy Commissioner for Licensing, we'll have a council.
Just a
You,
short,
you can have the conference here, we'll just move the.
Okay, that's fine, do that. We're still on
Let me-
video,
let me
right?
just-
Right.
Can
Why
I
don't we
just-
go
I,
outside?
hold on, wait,
We're just gonna go outside.
wait, Commissioner
Oh,
Ford.
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. The chairman hit on most of the points I was wondering about. Have they applied to change their MO, method of operation, to have activities on Saturdays yet?
No, they have not filed a supplemental statement saying that their hours of operation will include the weekend.
And these big events they have, what are they? Do you have any idea what they are?
They're essentially, DJ parties, DJ dance parties. The Bacchanalias is the best way that I can describe it, where they have hundreds of patrons, they have DJs, they have buckets of wine that people consume out of, literally buckets, gallon-sized buckets that patrons are walking around the premises with straws out of. So it's kind of the Wild West at this establishment.
And it's their own product?
Correct.
The wine. Okay.
To my knowledge, correct.
All right, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you,
So we're gonna
Commissioner.
take a recess for the members to conference and matter with council. All right, we are back on the record now after a brief conference with council.
Any other questions?
No, I'm good. Ready to vote, Chairman?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to vote for an emergency summary order suspension based on the fact that they are a focal point for police attention, sustained pattern of noisy behavior, alcohol overdoses that actually required hospitalization, violation of the town's site plan that they had agreed to, so forth and so on. So I vote to suspend.
I'm gonna vote to suspend summarily suspend as well. It's obvious that there is a complete lack of supervision over this place for all the points that Commissioner Ford pointed out. It's a police focal point. It's obviously affecting the neighbors' lives every weekend. Not to mention the most disturbing point of the whole thing is that almost every one of these issues has been going on now for at least 3 years. And the thing that really jumps out at me is the limousine and bus issue, which clearly has not been dealt with by them and cost 4 people their lives in 2014, Council?
July 15.
July of 2015, because they
Correct.
were leaving their winery and doing an illegal U-turn on the road, which is the only way in and out, and were broadsided by a truck. And 4 people died. It's obvious that that behavior is even still going on, along with all the other behavior. So I'm going to vote to summarily suspend. It's obvious that this is a risk to the public health, safety, and welfare, particularly in the town of Southold.
Thank you, members.
I don't have any other business unless the chairman or commissioner have anything.
I don't.
All right, then the meeting is adjourned.